Can your heart take it? Can your mind absorb it? We'll soon find out. It's me, Malcolm Tent, sitting in front of his $19 internet camera with an extremely cheap, flimsy backdrop, but it sure looks good on a $19 camera, doesn't it? Yes, with the latest in the Malcolm Tent Shoot interview series. You heard the clearing of the throat of my guest. Oh, I guess I better get right down to it then. My guest today, with no further ado, is a dude who, if you patronized the single greatest record store in the history of mankind, I'm told, Trash American Style of Danbury, Connecticut, if you patronized that fine establishment during a certain era, you might have seen a young fellow scurrying around in the back room with a big notebook in his hand and probably a big stack of records in his other hand and a pencil and a concerned look on his face, getting a job done. That would have been my guest today, a fellow who I christened Craig Colorusso, who was the mail order god of Trash American Style for quite a while. And above and beyond that, a wee bit of a shaker and a mover in the Danbury, Connecticut scene. And he has got a heck of a story. He's been on a heck of a journey for decades now. And we're going to start tracing that story and that journey from the very, very, very beginning to the present day, but not until we all turn our eyes towards the camera shift and we say, hello, Craig Colorusso.
Hi.
I hope the camera just shifted. It usually doesn't do anything until it hears a sound on the end of the guest.
Okay. Hello. Hi, Malcolm.
Hello. Very good to have you here, man. You're looking hale, hearty, healthy, and ready to raise hell.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I do yoga and I wear a mask.
Whoa.
There you go.
That's a new definition of hardcore, I think, in this new normal.
Yes.
Well, we're going to talk about some of the, not just the new normal, but the old abnormal as well, because that's where everything begins, really, you know, the old abnormal. Now, just to bring people up to date a little bit, I kind of alluded to it in my somewhat pithy introduction, but you are still very active in the arts and in music and as a creative force. You basically do it full time. And what you do now is, to my eye and ear, utterly unique. You do these installations that involve sound and interaction with nature. And it's very, how do you describe it? It's on the one hand very passive, because the art that results from it is completely dependent on the passive surroundings that they're in, but interactive because the user kind of has to sort of go in and experience it. And Sunboxes is the one that I've experienced the most and that I really, really enjoy. It's fantastic stuff. And so people should look that up right now. Craig Colorusso, Sunboxes, to get an idea of what Craig's doing these days. So when you see that and you kind of get the idea of what that's all about and what Craig's other things are about, you'd be shocked to learn that it all began with Connecticut hardcore. And maybe even before that, just some good old-fashioned gut bucket punk rock. So why don't we leave Craig to tell the story of like how you, Craig Colorusso, got into music, and more specifically, what kind of music you got into and how it started you on this twisted path.
Okay. Well, when I was 14, I started to play guitar. And to be perfectly honest, I wanted girls to like me. And I thought that that was the way to go. It was 1984, that Van Halen record came out. There were still tall tales of Led Zeppelin tours in the air. So I thought I should be a rock star. That sounds awesome. And I quickly found out the real power of music had nothing to do with finding women and all that stuff. I think that I just hit it at the right time because there was all this amazing music happening. And it was just a great time to sort of pick up the guitar and figure out what I wanted to do with my life. It all just made perfect sense.
At the age of 14, that's a pretty heavy determination to make at an age like that.
It was undeniable. You know, I grew up on the classics. I listened to Led Zeppelin a lot. I listened to Van Halen. I listened to Black Sabbath. And I still to this day listen to all that music. I think it's all wonderful stuff. But at the time, it felt like an archaeological deep dig because it had already happened. And so I was sort of like looking at the world as past tense. And when I found punk rock, it was of the moment. And that was just really, really exciting for me. I mean, you know, a classic example, I could go to Trash American Style and I could purchase a Crippled Youth 7-inch. And then 2 days later, I could go see them in Mayapack, New York, with some guys I went to high school with who were in a band called Wide Awake. I was like part of the scene. I mean, I was part of something happening, and I felt like it just, you know, it was just amazing to do that. It was amazing to see music other than just commerce, other than just purchasing stuff and selling stuff. It was about being part of a movement. And, you know, I was quickly taken by the hardcore scene, specifically the straight edge element of it, because I was a straight edge kid. I don't have like a glamorous story. You know, I wasn't drunk at age 13 and decided it was enough for me. It just never appealed to me. And it was just really awesome to hear people sing about stuff like that, as opposed to getting chicks, which is why I originally got into it in the first place. So full circle right there, right?
Right. So that kind of begs the question, how did you discover this kind of esoteric, very underground, specialized kind of a scene?
Well, I went to high school with a guy who just seemed to know, he just seemed to know a lot of stuff about music. And, you know, I'm old. This was before the internet, man. You know, like the world of information was not at your fingertips. And so he just somehow, and I don't know why, he didn't have an older brother or anything. He just always knew about stuff. And then Trash American Style opened, and it was, you know, game over. You know, we had a place to go and really be taken by whatever was out there. But yeah, I mean, more specifically, I liked loud guitar. I liked fast music. I liked the idea. I really wanted the power of music. I mean, I think one of the things I loved about hardcore was that, you know, I was attracted to the music, but going to a show was not just this passive experience. I wasn't just sitting there watching something happen. There was this physicality to it that I really loved. And, you know, I know people say stuff about the pit, but man, you know, here we are all these years later. I felt like I met a lot more gentlemanly souls in the mosh pit than I did in my real life. And that's the truth, man.
Well, yeah, I mean, if somebody got knocked down, everybody would swarm in and pick them up.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why that's never talked about, but that was my experience.
Yeah, well, it doesn't make headlines, you know. It's, you know, man killed at Ramallah concert in New Jersey makes for a better headline than a whole bunch of kids got together and found somebody's glasses that had fallen on the floor, you know, in the pit. And that's for at least for a very long time, that's what I saw principally. And I also, like going to hardcore shows, I never felt uncomfortable. Like I only got into the mosh pit once, and I've got this great scar under my goatee because of that. But, you know, because I always wanted to be close to the action, I was usually on the periphery, and I always felt comfortable there. Like I knew that I wasn't going to get hit. Maybe somebody would stumble over and fall into me or something like that. But I knew that nobody was going to start anything or deliberately go out of their way to take a swing or whatever. Everybody in the pit was always very well aware of their surroundings and never like really messed with anybody who wasn't actively participating. And that's very important.
Yeah, and sort of a side note, the only injury I've ever had in terms of dancing, I have a small scar on the bottom of my chin, was at the Monsterland video shoot in their basement. I ran into the camera guy and his lens kind of caught me right there. And so, you know, isn't that strange? I got more injured at a Monsterland video shoot than seeing Youth of Today or Fugazi or Shelter, you know, like it's crazy,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, that's great. I love and anybody who saw the interview I did with Greg Vegas a few weeks ago, which by the way is archived on my Facebook page, and if it's not archived on my YouTube channel now, will be soon. That's an entire, well, I was going to say it's an entire other scene in Danbury, but not really. It's like all the different scenes to one extent or another kind of intermingled and overlapped, you know, maybe not at first, but after a while, I think they certainly did.
I would agree. You know, looking back, maybe it's just my memory trying to remember the good things, but I definitely see more allegiances than I don't know, wars between sections and factions and people. I do remember seeing. I feel like I saw Greg Vegas at a lot of hardcore shows. You know, and I don't know. Yeah, I think we were all sort of interconnected in some way.
Yeah, I think you put it very well. There definitely were allegiances and not wars. I don't remember. I mean, you know, factionalism is obviously inevitable in human behavior, but as far as our scene and, like, you know, the hardcore scene and the goth scene and the dance scene and the metal scene, everybody pretty much got along, and you'd see people at this kind of show or that kind of show and buying each other's records and checking each other out. I don't know if that was unique, but that's definitely what I think of in terms of Western Connecticut and Danbury. So, like, I remember, believe it or not, the first time you ever set foot into Trash American Style, it was the first day we opened, the very first day, November 29th, 1986. And you came in with a dude, might have been the guy you were talking about who knew his music. I don't know his name. And the first record you ever bought was my personal copy of the 10-inch EP Black Market Clash by The Clash.
I still have it. It's a great record, man.
All right, there you go. And I remember that at that time, The Clash was your main jam.
Yes. Yes, definitely. I feel like The Clash was a great segue into hardcore for me. I play guitar. I don't like guitar solos. I think they're silly. And I feel like The Clash made great, powerful music with very little guitar solos, you know? That was very appealing to me. And there was something about The Clash that was musical, that was sort of undeniable. I feel like when I was growing up and kids were into rock and roll, there was this big push against punk rock and, you know, there's no virtuosity in it and all that stuff. And, you know, I think that's an interesting conversation, but if you want to go there, I think it stops at Black Flag because I'm sorry, I don't care who you are. Greg Ginn knows how to play guitar. The motherfucker can play, you know? So I think the virtuosity conversation pretty much ends with him. Game over. Let's just get back with it, you know? And I think The Clash was a great segue to that because they made beautiful music. And I don't know, I understand we have to label things because our minds need to categorize them. But I think that sometimes, like, I don't care what kind of music it is. I just want to listen to it. If it's good, I'll listen to it again. If not, I won't. I'm a pretty simple guy. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. It's always been my motto. If I like it, it's good. If it's good, I like it. You know, what more do you really need?
Yeah.
And then I think that also sort of goes back to the Danbury scene. I think it's kind of safe to say that was pretty much an overall point of view from everybody in it. But I digress. We could talk about scene politics and dynamics forever. We want to get into some specifics. So there you are, you're a young kid. You've discovered the hardcore scene. Now, this is a question. Did you go to see the 7 Seconds show on November 29th, 1986, which would have been the day that we opened?
I don't recall. Was that the Anthrax?
Yeah, it's the Anthrax.
I'm assuming. And I saw 7 Seconds play with Monsterland opened up. I'm sure that was after that. I don't think so. I think my first show at the Anthrax was Dag Nasty, and I think, I think it was, I saw Dag Nasty, and I don't remember who opened, but
okay,
it was great.
If I recall correctly, that was January of 87, maybe February of 87.
How do you know that?
Because I taped it, dude, and I've got the cassette sitting on a shelf over there. Duh. You know me. Gee whiz. Don't ask me the name of somebody I met at a record show 15 minutes ago, or ask me to recognize their face. I'm sorry, it's not going to happen. But if you want to know the date of a show 33 years ago at a club in Norwalk, Connecticut. I gotcha.
All right, man. I might take you up on that at some point.
All right. Well, you know, something else, a point you made a second ago that I think is worth touching on was the immediacy of local music and local bands and the kind of a scene where if you went to a concert, you weren't sitting in a chair with a ticket stub and a number on the armrest telling you that you were sitting in the right spot, and the band's off over there with a, you know, smoke and lights and security going like this, staring the crowd down. You were there.
Yeah.
You know, experiencing music in a way that you had never experienced before. And, you know, for me, kind of made that other full-blown concert experience kind of inadequate after that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, my first big show, I think I was 13. I saw Yes in like 1982 or 83. And we were in like, I don't know, Hartford or New Haven, one of those big venues. And we were like a mile away. And it was awesome because it was my first experience. It was loud. I knew all the songs, but it just didn't feel right. Part of it was the two dudes next to me were like, I was trying to be friendly. I was like, hey, I really like this song. And they just looked at me, you know, and then they continued to smoke weed for the rest of the time. And I just wasn't into it, man. I saw Robert Plant and I actually had floor seats and I was so excited. And I got there and it was just, I mean, the music was awesome, but it was just boring. I didn't feel like I was there. I felt like a spectator, you know, and I didn't want to be a spectator in my life. I wanted to be part of it. And I know might sound kind of egocentric, and yeah, I have a big ego. That's well proven, but I wanted to be part of something that not only I want to be part of something that I could contribute to its outcome. And I didn't feel that way at Robert Plant. You know, I got to stand there before a quote unquote legend, and it was awesome. And he was, you know, charismatic as you can be a half mile away through a big PA, but it wasn't like going to see, I mean, there was something about going to see the first Fugazi show at the Anthrax. I remember just hearing the first few notes. I was like, man, I love these guys. I bought the record at Trash American Style, and here I am watching them. I really feel like I am part of history. I'm part of a living, breathing thing. And this is awesome. And this is different than going to see Van Halen, listening to Aerosmith, listening to Black Sabbath. It's just different. And I prefer this.
Definitely. So then that kind of begs the question, what was it, how was it that you first took that step from being a spectator to a participant?
Well, I played in a lot of bands. I think the first thing when I was in, Todd Rancic, our great friend, called me up one day and said, hey, the guitar player in my band refuses to go on tour. He's afraid his girlfriend will cheat on him. Can you play guitar? And I was, you know, I thought that was hilarious. And I'm like, yeah, of course. I'll be there in 3 days. And it was awesome. I felt like, you know, I knew I wanted to do this for the rest of my life. And I really owe a big amount of gratitude to Todd Rancic, because I don't think I made his band any better, but he certainly made my life better.
Right on. That would have been Far Cry, who at the time were DC, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, Todd lived in Newtown, Connecticut, and then he moved to DC and he started this band, and they were great. I thought they were really awesome. And then the guitar player spot opened up, so of course I jumped in. Yeah, and we did this big tour, and we got into a car accident on our way to Chicago, so we got cut short. We actually played at the store. I think that was the last show of the gig. And then he went off, and he went to Boston. He went to college. And he did a bunch of other things.
Yeah, he's still out there on the internet. I've made intermittent contact with Todd Rancic over the years. So Todd, if you're out there, hey, Mazel Tov. And I remember that show when you guys played at the store. That was pretty much when I made the offer to release the Far Cry record, which came out as TPOS number 53. And the band broke up immediately after that. And yeah, we won't go there. We'll just say it's a good record, and I'm glad I put it out. We'll just leave it at that.
It was a great record. But, so in terms of your question, this is a perfect process for me. I didn't compose any of the music. It was his thing, and I was just part of it. And so that just piqued my curiosity. And I just wanted to keep going. And, at the time, I started to think about other things. Like, I remember I showed up with a wah pedal, and he was like, what is that? I'm like, it's a wah pedal. You know what it does. He's like, no, I know what it is. I'm saying, what is it doing here? So I couldn't play my wah pedal in Far Cry, but that's okay because I got to use it later.
Right on. So that was actually your first band. I didn't know that.
Yeah, definitely.
Huh. Okay, so you did the Far Cry tour. It ended, and you're back in Connecticut, and okay, you've got a taste of the action. What next?
I started to recruit people to play music that I wanted to write. And so I think the first band was Blacktop, which you were part of.
I remember that. Yep.
Super charismatic singer, John, the metal guy. Do you remember him?
I don't.
Yeah, we did a few shows. I think we did 2.
Okay.
I remember. I don't remember. And once again, it was like I could see what I wanted to do, and I could see what I had to do to get there. And I knew that those guys weren't into it. Like there was the drummer guy. Every time we hung out, he was like, "I really want to be like a director when I grow up." And I'm like, "Okay, well, why don't you get a camera and direct something?" I mean, I want to be a guitar player. That's why I have a guitar in my hands.
Right.
Like I just, what do you want from me? Yeah, so it didn't really work out. But I thought we had some good songs. And it was good to get out and play.
Yeah, definitely. Now, see, this is where my memory gets a little bit hazy. This is the kind of thing that when you're in it at the time, you think you'll remember this moment forever. And of course, you don't. It gets buried in the gigantic avalanche of memories that you think you'll have forever. Blacktop was concurrent with Skullfuck.
Yeah, we opened up for ourselves.
Okay.
Skullfuck was sort of like a jazzy kind of improv thing that was very loud, and it was just the trio. It was just the 3 of us. And then Blacktop was the singer.
Is that the one I was part of with Skullfuck?
Yeah, and Blacktop.
And oh God, okay. How come I don't remember having a singer?
We didn't have a good PA, man.
All right, because I remember the 3 of us definitely doing some jams. And one thing I remember very clearly of the few things I do remember very clearly about interactive relationships, the first batch of songs that you showed me that you played on the guitar were very, I think maybe for lack of a better term, very modal. They were based on a riff that just basically kind of repeated. And at the time, I thought, well, no, you really can't do that. You need to have verse, a chorus, some kind of a middle 8. And I remember that you were receptive to that. And we ended up writing stuff that was more like pop song structured. But now that I think about it, when you showed me those songs that were more strictly modal and flowing, that was actually kind of in some way a foreshadowing of what you're doing now.
Yeah, I would agree. It all makes sense to me, but there's like a million little steps in between. And sort of, we'll go into the future for a moment. I had a gig in Massachusetts, and do you remember Mandy Pacious? She was a big Trash fan.
Yeah.
She was living up there, and she came up there, and I hadn't seen her in a while, but so we were hanging out, and then this other dude came and was asking me, he's like, I read in your bio that you were like in a hardcore band, and now you're making this. Like, I don't understand. How did you get here? And Mandy turns around, she's like, well, the thing is, when he was playing in China Pig and those other bands, his guitar sounded like this. And now he's just doing this. And I was like, my God, she's right.
Yeah.
So you were right too.
There you go. And it, I just think it's really interesting because it shows how firmly rooted one's concept is, and if you just stick with it, like you just said, there's a million little steps, but eventually you'll get to the purity of that expression. And so, yeah, we've just taken the step. We've got Blacktop, we've got Skullfuck. We played a couple of shows, and then that sort of went the way it went. And this is 90. We're into the early 90s by this point. Like we started the story in 86. Now we're like into the early 90s.
Yeah, and then I think the next thing is, China Pig, which in the beginning is synonymous with the Chicken Coop, I think, because that's where we practiced. And I think our first China Pig show, which was at WestCon, was the day Nirvana's record came out, and it seemed like the world changed. We played with Vanilla Trainwreck.
Oh man, great North Carolina band.
Yeah.
All right, but let's take a step back for a second. What came first? This is not a rhetorical question, but what came first, the chicken coop or the China pig?
The chicken coop came first.
Okay, so tell the people about the chicken coop for the sad people who weren't actually there, didn't get to experience the chicken coop. What was the chicken coop?
Okay, it all ties in together. John, the singer from Blacktop, which you don't remember, he was like a car guy, and he was going to drive cross country. And so he went to this car shop on Main Street in Danbury and said, "Hey, I'm driving across country. I need some parts, but I don't have any money. What can I do?" And so the woman, Evie Blas, she owned the place, and she's like, "Well, you can help me clean up. I'm trying to move everything out and open this restaurant." And so he did that, and then somehow I got pulled into it, and I was like, this is a room, and we could fill this room with bands, and then people can come see it, and it'll be awesome as soon as we get all these car parts out of the way. And so we slowly moved all the car parts to the basement, and she owned two businesses side by side, and then there was a wall that had to come down. And it's a lot of money to take down a wall and build the proper exits and all that stuff. So that was the main plan. But in the meantime, Evie Blas, we called her the Chicken Lady because she had some, if I remember correctly, she had some problems with her husband. I think he was very abusive to her. And I think the story I heard was that she, was constantly abused. And I think she had like a knife or something, and she was arrested or something like that. And I don't know. It's all bizarre. She was keeping chickens in the place to cut them up and eat them. And I don't know. We called her the Chicken Lady. And then I thought, why not call it the Chicken Coop? But
Yeah, well, the story I heard was that the chickens somehow ended up on the steps of City Hall with their necks wrung. I don't know.
oh, that's awesome. I didn't hear that. She was a really, really nice lady, and she let us really have the run of the place. And she was really she was open. I mean, could you imagine? I mean, she was a little bit older than all of us, and we were playing this weird music. Yeah, she let us put on these shows, and that was my first venture into being a promoter. And we did a lot of great stuff. I think the height of it all was there was three record executives who were coming to see Monsterland from different companies, and I thought, man, we're gonna have like a little fist fight outside over who gets to sign Monsterland. That to me is awesome. It was great. I mean, a lot of great bands played.
Yeah, I mean, it was for the time that you were doing it. It was a real center of activity on Main Street in Danbury, right across from the Danbury Music Center, where all the classical musicians hung out. Next to where the Woolworths used to be. It was like about as Main Street USA as you can possibly get. And there's all these bands like Freak Baby and China Pig and Her Tears and the Bunny Brains. And I think the biggest band, if you want to talk about terms of stature, the Mekons played at the Chicken Coop. I mean, that's pretty major stuff.
Yeah, that was a Dan show.
Oh, all right, whatever. We'll just sort of carry on right now. But it was a great show, and just the fact that we had a space like that in Danbury for a while was pretty cool.
Yeah, and I think this is another example of like I didn't want to be a spectator. I want to see bands, so I could sit there and wait for Tuxedo Junction to book them, or I could just do it myself. I mean, I don't understand why more people didn't do this. Yeah, it's a pain in the ass, but so what? I mean, so are lots of things. It just seems so worth it to me. Yeah, and the Chicken Coop was great because we really didn't have to. Basically, we just didn't have to burn the place down.
Right.
Evie Blas was very cool. The Chicken Lady was like, I don't care what you do. And I was like, okay.
Yeah, and it was all ages too, which is another very important consideration.
Yes, all ages. From what I've gathered in all my travels, it seems like rock and roll is just the background to fornication, and alcohol is a big part of that. And it's just uninteresting, So I didn't want to do it then. I certainly don't want to do it now.
And plus when you talk about terms of just sheer raw creative energy, by and large, it comes from the kids.
Hmm.
I would like to think that, I'm 56 years old and maybe I'm an exception to the rule, but by and large, all the good stuff, all the creation, all that piss and vinegar, all that desire and drive to do things and create things comes from the young folks. And when you give the young people a place to do it, things are going to happen. And that's exciting. That to me is the real excitement right there.
Well, I think you kind of touched on something when you talk about like the idea of a scene and what gives what creates a fertile ground for things to happen. And I think that's one of them. I think you need a legitimate place to basically showcase what you're working on. And it has to be in such a way that it's big enough that it has a certain amount of prestige to it and it's legitimate, but not so big that you have like, certain creative like parameters that you need to fit into to make it happen. And I think for me, like, I don't think the Chicken Coop, I don't know that it was on anybody's radar other than people in Danbury, but it was a legitimate space that you could go and you can hear music. And I think I think you need that. I think, I don't know. I feel like I've gone through most of my early life seeking permission to do things. And at this time in my life, I came to the conclusion that like the question isn't who's going to allow me to do this. The question should really be who's going to stop me, And I feel like there was just an army of people that were just ready to jump in and be part of this. And I wanted to make it happen for everyone.
Right on. And the timing was perfect. Like what you said about a minute ago, how, Nirvana's album came out the very same day. You talk about a perfect storm. It's like, that's when all of a sudden everything musically for the kind of stuff that we were trying to do now had a stage. It had a platform. And a lot of stuff was possible that might not have been possible even a year or two earlier.
I definitely agree with that, but let me ask you this question. In the long run, do you think it helped or hurt the quote unquote scene?
I think it helped it, definitely. I think it helped it. And it's interesting when you phrase it that way, because the immediate thing I think of is when the Grateful Dead were getting their big mainstream acceptance right around the same time as all this in the early 90s. And I think that was a case of the mainstream acceptance of the Grateful Dead and the Grateful Dead lifestyle hurt the whole thing. Because that's when you got all the people who didn't get it at all attaching themselves to that bandwagon and bringing in all the negative bullshit and the stupid behaviors and the jock frat boy mentality. All of a sudden that was coming into the Grateful Dead. And, it certainly soured it for me. I was never like a deadhead per se, but I liked the positive energy that there was. And I liked the ideals behind it. And the scene that there was, it was great. But then all these fucking knuckleheads started coming in because they read about him in the Hartford Courant. Said, oh yeah, well, I trip on acid and drink beer, and and they would start coming around to shows and screwing everything up.
Yeah.
Conversely, it seems to me that the exposure that our thing got because of Nirvana and Sub Pop and all that, it seemed to bring the creative people in and the misfits and the rejects and those who didn't think it was possible to make music or be in a band or bring a camera to a show or write a zine or something like that. It seemed to draw those people out and the creativity just exploded. So I would say it was a big positive.
Okay.
What do you think?
I don't know yet. I'm waiting to see how it all pans out. I think there's something about reading like, the Henry Rollins Get in the Van book when you realize just how those guys played every nook and cranny because they could, not because they had like this booking agent, just that they did it themselves. And I guess I miss that. I miss, I don't know, I miss the scrappiness of it. But yeah, it's tough to say. I don't know.
I don't know if I get what you're. I don't know if I understand what you're saying. I mean, because I always thought that, like, again, just looking at our scene and the way that we all did it, it was pretty damn scrappy. I mean, it was still all DIY and having to move a warehouse full of auto parts out, to clear a spot, and you had
Well,
to
I
go
would say
to.
for our scene, yeah, I mean, for us, for me personally in Danbury, I felt invigorated by it. I'm thinking more like looking back, historically, did it really help the music scene in
Ah,
general?
okay. You mean like the scene?
The scene, yeah.
Oh, at the end of the day, it didn't make any difference. Not at all. Not at
Okay.
all. Just became a bunch of commodified bullshit with all your Pearl Jams and Big F's and Stone Temple fuckwads and all that jive ass turkey. That's just,
Yeah.
that was inevitable, I mean, it happened to punk rock, the fucking assholes. Notice how profane my language just got talking about this
I
stuff.
know, I didn't mean to get you riled, man.
It pisses me off to this day. All the money men and the investors and the venture capitalists seize upon our culture, whatever it might be, and just suck the life out of it and give it to the mindless, brainless idiots out there who think that Pearl Jam is the be all and the end all. Sorry, guys, if you like Pearl Jam, if you're a Pearl Jam fan, you go for it, enjoy it. I don't like the corporate aspect of it and the corporate culture of it. I don't like their music, and I definitely don't like the big business aspect of it. And I think Pearl Jam, whether you like them or not, embodies a lot of that because it's big business, and I hate big business.
Yeah.
So, does that answer your question?
Yeah, spot on, man.
Okay. But that's the rub, whenever there's any kind of an underground scene like that. Look at hip hop, hip hop and rap, which was absolutely street culture, of the people, by the people, for the people. And look what happened once the corporations got a hold of it. It became completely, utterly commodified. It's inevitable. There's nothing we can do about it.
Well, I think, maybe jumping ahead a bit, that made my departure from music into art much more easy to handle. And I feel like, I feel two things. I feel much more successful as an artist now than I did it when I was a musician. And I think part of that, I think the work is stronger, but I also think there's just more avenues. There's more people willing to spend money on art, so I can continue to do it. And I think the music industry is just too safe. Um, I was at a gig once, and a guy asked me, how I went from playing music to doing sunboxes. And I was like, look, dude, the world does not need another poorly played Beatles cover. I think we've done it. We're good. We don't need that anymore. And he laughed, and he's like, me and my son are actually off to a Beatles festival. We're playing like yesterday together. And he's like, I totally know what you mean. I was like, sorry, man, I didn't mean to offend. He's like, no, it's not. It's terrible. We're not good at it, but we're doing it anyway. And I thought, wow, I mean, he's doing it. How ridiculous.
Right.
So I guess I feel like if, I read an article somewhere that if the music industry, allowed for more creativity, like television, for instance, we would be in a different space. I mean, I do watch TV, but it doesn't engage me the way music does. But I see the point. I see where they're going. I mean, the 80s sitcoms with laugh tracks. Yeah, we can watch reruns of Seinfeld. We don't need to see that again. Now there's a little more sophisticated like storytelling. I mean, it's not quite perfect yet, but it's better. And there's an evolution. And I don't feel like there's that evolution in music. And maybe this comes back to like, the three white guys that control everything sit in their limo meetings and say, yeah, we're just going to keep doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
that's fine. I bow out gracefully.
Right on, right on. Well, okay, this is cool. We're aiming toward the story as it is now. So let's talk about China Pig for a little bit, and the fact that, let's talk about China Pig a little bit. Just tell us a bit about the China Pig, because that would be, I guess, your main band in Danbury at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I was playing guitar, and Keith Romeo was playing drums. And Keith Romeo was a guitar player, and I was like, well, I play guitar, so you got to do something else. And he was like, okay, I'll play drums. I'm like, great. I bet you're a better drummer than I would be, so this will work out fine. And so we played a lot, and then somehow Fudd ended up in the band. I'm not exactly sure how. He would say that through years of working at Trash American Style, pushing certain records on me, he was, cultivating the perfect bandmate. And, there might be some truth to that, because I do remember him saying, you can't listen to that anymore. That's stupid. Here, listen to this.
The main function of a counter guy. And let's just take a step back for those of you who don't know. Excuse me, the infamous FUD. And I just have to go on record right now. I always take pains to point this out. He didn't like being called FUD. He didn't really like that name. So I always just called him Ludwig. Chris Ludwig, who currently sits on some governing council in New Milford. I don't know exactly what his municipal function is, but counter guy Ludwig at Trash American Style is now a government bigwig out there. And so he, for 8-something years, was my left-hand man at Trash American Style. He was the counter guy. He would place orders. He was the mainstay for a very long time. And even if I was like out at the post office or, doing something, he was always there. And he was the dude that for a long time, in a lot of ways, was the face of Trash American Style and the personality thereof. So that's who we're talking about when Craig says, oh, well, Fudd ended up in the band. And he's the guy who told me to listen to Cluster and not Van Halen.
I think that was actually a conversation.
So that was the trio.
Yeah, I feel like he definitely turned me on to some good music. And I think it was great to be in a band with Fudd. I sometimes wish that we did more than we did, but what can you do? All right, so Fudd's in the band. So we formalized as a 3-piece, and we played some shows, and it was great. And we did a few recordings here and there. We were on a couple compilations, did some singles, and then Romeo split. He wanted to go find himself somewhere, and so I remember having a super meeting with Tom Monahan. He just pulled me aside and he was like, "Look, I heard Romeo's leaving. Protocol. Get everything he's ever been part of recorded right now for the next guy to come in and learn it all perfectly." I was like, "Okay." So we did that. And then Tom Monahan's grandmother died, and his cousin, Joel Westerdale, came to town and hung out. And Westerdale was in the band instantly because he was just perfect.
Right on. I remember that. Yes, he was very good. Very good. And I think I can tell right now we're going to have to go into 2 parts on this, because the next part of the conversation, as relates to China Pig and DIY, is the fact that you guys, as you just said, recorded a lot and released a lot, but you neglected to mention that a lot of the stuff that you released was on a certain little record label called M.U.D. Industries. What the hell is that, Craig?
Well, I guess we're back to, I don't know, not wanting to be a spectator. I was at work one day at Trash American Style, and a little bird came into my work area and dropped off a order form to United Record Pressing Plant at 45 Chestnut Avenue, Nashville, Tennessee, and said, "Hey, this is how you do it," and he walked away.
Oh, so it's my fault, you're saying. All right. Well, excuse me. Now, prior to that, had you tried to shop your band, make demos, or try to get someone else to release any of your music?
No, part of it was I didn't want to. I mean, my heroes were Ian MacKaye. I wanted to do it myself. And, I guess maybe on a more philosophical level, I liked what I did. I didn't need someone to tell me it was okay. I didn't need someone to tell me that they could sell it. I didn't need any of that. In fact, those conversations kind of made me, sort of turned me away from wanting to do music business stuff at all. I think a lot of it comes back to, I'm just a simple guy. I want to make it, I want to put it out, and I want to go down this path. I I don't need to be like famous. I don't need all these things. I want to just do the work. And yeah, I don't know. Looking back, maybe I should have, maybe not. I don't know. I mean, who knows? I guess ultimately I just wanted to kind of create my own destiny. And I like I like working like that. I like the idea of making something. And I think that records are the next extension of music. You know, you hear this thing in your head and then you make it and you share it with the world. And then you can physically make the record. I mean, how amazing is that? And it's like this magical thing because I don't have a record press in my house. So I send off this tape and then magically all these boxes show up and then I put them together in the covers. I mean, that to me just seems really, really awesome. So yeah, I don't know. I also kind of went off on a tangent with printing. I worked at a print shop. And so I, I like making stuff with my hands. And I remember once I did something somewhere and I printed something and I gave it to this guy and he was like, "Oh, I see you're really into marketing and all that music business stuff." And I was like, "You know what, dude? I was in a warehouse with like basically people who've been in prison and we printed this. I designed it myself and I printed myself. I don't know how much more punk rock you can get. I mean, I guess I could have squirted my blood in there like Kiss did, but I didn't."
Right. Well, no, go ahead.
I think there was something really amazing about making stuff. It just goes back to that. I like making things. I don't really come from a long line of like woodworkers or anything, so all this stuff seems kind of new to me, and it's awesome.
Yeah, and it's all very, ooh, pardon me, it's all very tactile. You know, you talk about the process of making something. It's very tactile. You take the sleeve, you fold it, you handle the record, you put it into the sleeve, you take the insert. It's all very, you're doing something. You're actually working with a material. To listen to the music, you remove the object from the sleeve. You place the object on a record player and you physically drop a needle and the needle physically vibrates in the groove and creates this music that you can then listen to. You know, it's really, really all about the action and the motion and the literally creation of an object, which you then send out into the world and people interact with it.
Yeah, I was always a little jealous of my like sculptor and painter friends because they had things, you know, and like making music, you know, it's just, you know, your ears are picking up frequencies and we're all sort of agreeing on pitch. You know, that's music. It doesn't exist. You know, if you ask me what I did all day, I'd say, well, I thought about music. Maybe I wrote it down, but for the most part, it's just sounds. There's something really cool about saying, you know, what have you done? Well, here's a record.
Right, right. And so you did a whole bunch of that. And I think when we get together, I'm going to round up as much M.U.D. industry stuff as I have. And I'd like to go through the entire catalog and talk about the records, the bands, the making thereof. And because that's a whole bunch of stories right then and there with the personalities and great music. So
sure,
put that aside for the time being.
Okay.
So what happened? You're doing all this stuff, and then something somewhere along the line, the narrative changed a little bit.
You mean in terms of China Pig?
Yeah, China Pig, just kind of everything. How does the story move along from here?
Well, you know, Westerdale's really smart. So he went to Harvard after China Pig, and he basically told me, you know, I'm going to leave and go to grad school. And I said, great. I'm kind of bummed, but let's make a deal. You give me that year, we'll do a tour and we'll make a record. And he said, all right, let's do that. And so we did. And it was great. Maybe the urgency is what really made everything happen for me because I knew he was leaving. And, you know, who am I to keep a guy from going to Harvard graduate school to play in my band?
Right.
And side note, he had some kind of exchange program. He was going to go to Ghana and study drumming, cultural drumming. And instead, I convinced him to come to Connecticut and do a tour with China Pig. I don't know how I pulled that off, but anyway, so he gave me the year. We did a tour, and it was awesome. It really, really was great. And then it ended, and we lived in a mansion in Waterbury, Connecticut, and we talked a lot about music. We talked a lot about what we did with China Pig and where we wanted to go next. And yeah, it was sort of like a refueling time in my mind. Really trying to figure out what's important and what's not. And then I worked at a print shop, and we did a thing called Machina, where we played with the 2 offset presses going while Westerdale and I played instruments. And to me, that was one of those turning points. I was like, wow, we're making music in a space that's designed to print whatever, letters or posters. And I just thought, my mind just started to wander, and I thought, this is so awesome. And I think that's definitely one of those pivot points for me.
Wow, so you actually played with the machines, the rhythm of the machines?
Well, yeah, I ran one of the presses, and I heard those machines a lot. I worked on an AB-Dix 360 AD and with a 25-year anniversary compact water system. And this has such a sound to it. And, you work on it all day, and you just kind of get into these mental zones. And I thought, this is music, no disrespect, but why don't we turn Pearl Jam off for a minute and listen to these presses? They're beautiful. And so, talking with that, Westerdale was the accountant there. And, we were just talking one day, and we're like, let's do a show here. And our boss, who was definitely crazy, but she was into it because she liked art. And so she was like, yeah, let's do it. And I kind of forgot about this, actually. So we went down there to rehearse a couple of times. And so we would leave Waterbury at like 4 a.m. so we could get to the press place in Danbury before everybody else got there. And so we played, and it was awesome. It was like playing music while everyone else in the world was asleep. It just felt like otherworldly. And I always kind of had a thing about being up when no one else was up, or being out and about. I have a lot of fond memories of walking places in the middle of the night because it's quiet.
Yeah, you got the whole place to yourself. No one's gonna look at you or try to start a conversation. You're literally in the zone, and the zone is huge.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so after Machina, we thought, wow, we were really onto something. And so then we decided to do a thing called Tog Music, which was going to be a 24-hour performance. And this was somewhat inspired by a John Cage performance at the University of Hartford. He did I forgot what it was called, but it was a performance that Mike Deming told us about. He was a producer who produced the China Pig record and a bunch of other Danbury bands. And he told me that it was really amazing. And John Cage was really into macrobiotic food. So there were all these like gourds and things to eat during intermissions. And Mike was telling me that to stay up, he and his friends ate a bunch of acid. And so when they went down to eat these gourds, everything was kind of like mutating. And I was like, wow, I don't do acid. I don't really eat gourds, but that sounds awesome. And so then Westerdale and I started thinking about what would be like to do a 24-hour performance. And, all the stuff that comes with that, like, our world is defined by clocks and calendars, and the idea of a 24-hour chunk. I mean, we just thought that was so, so cool. And we did the show, and it was really, really awesome. I believe you participated in it a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. And
it was awesome. But I have to admit, our practice beforehand was really amazing because we were in the house in Waterbury, and the setup of the gig was we would play together for an hour, and then one of us would play while the other has a break, and then we'd come back together, and then the other person would take a break. So there was always this sort of like tag back and forth. And I just remember like doing it in the house for like 12 hours. And when Westerdale was playing, I would like go and I would do yoga or I would eat. And then when it was his turn to go and take a break, he would read a book or eat. It was just part of like the idea that music was just part of our lives. It wasn't something that we did. It was something that we were. And to me, that was awesome.
Yeah, definitely. And this is really cool because I never knew any of this. This is the missing link between guitar, bass, drums, and sunboxes.
Yeah, it's definitely there.
And like a printing press. Think about that. A printing press was the sort of the gateway that got you out of one mindset and into another, and the idea kept evolving. And Tog music now I see is also, it is, if I understand it correctly, also a precursor to Sunboxes and the other things they're doing now, in that it's timeless.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the things I've been obsessed with are time and how we perceive time. And, there's a great Captain Beefheart quote, he tries to make the clock stop. And the way I've always interpreted that is like doing something in such a way that you're just present, fully present. And to me, that's always been the goal, being present. Sort of a side note, we had a bit of a dilemma in China Pig because, we composed these songs and they had to be played a certain way. And then we'd go out on the road and we tried to play them really well. And so we thought, that's a lot of work. There's got to be something else. There's got to be something of the moment that we could add to this. And so then we started sort of feeling, how could improvisation work with us? How can we play these perfectly composed pieces around other stuff that is just of the moment? And I feel like sometimes it really worked and sometimes it was just a mess because I come from rock and roll culture. We're not jazz guys. I don't think like a jazz guy. I think like a rock guy. I like loud distorted guitar, but I wanted that freeness. I wanted that, instant composition opportunity. And I think that Westerdale and I pursued that outside of China Pig with both Machina and Tog Music.
Right on. Right on. Yeah, that's something I can relate to personally because, first with the Bunny Brains and now with Ultra Bunny, which I've been doing for almost 20 years now, it's all improv, but it's rock. It's rock music, but all improv. And that's what the whole thing is, for me, has always been about, is trying to transcend time, and when you're really hitting it, when the band clicks, and what I'm talking about, when everything's like right in the pocket and in the groove, no time, no space, no pain, no nothing. You just feel literally that vibration and you transcend. And really, I found the best way to do it is through the art of improvising. Because there's no structure.
Yeah. Well, for me, I think too, I remember being in bands and playing and being, having that tinge like, okay, the change is coming. I'm not ready to change. I like this. Let's just hang out. Let's just, where are you going? Where's the fire, bro? Let's just see where this goes. And like, Westerdale was really into that. We, I remember after China Pig practices, he and I would just drive for hours in the night. I mean, we were always in search of like a good diner. And it's sort of silly now, but we were always hoping to see a UFO too. And we saw a lot of diners. I don't think we saw any UFOs, but we would just play this music and then we'd listen to the practice tapes and just talk about it. And I just, once again, I think that, this is what I wanted for my life. I didn't want to just play songs. I didn't want to just play music. I wanted to be the music. And I think that that's really sort of started with China Pig for me.
Right on. I can totally dig it. So was it Joel going off to graduate school that signaled the end of the band?
Pretty much. There were some inner dynamic issues. I wanted to take over the world, and not everybody in the band wanted to. And that's okay. It's not for everyone. I realize that. It took me a while, but I don't know. I read an interview with somebody who said that, they wanted to be a professional musician, not so much because they wanted to be rock stars, because they wanted to justify the idea of playing guitar every day. And there's something appealing about that. I want to play guitar every day. And, if you can't figure out how to make a living doing that, then I think it falls into problems, let's just say.
Mm-hmm.
So,
no.
But anyway, I think we still had an EP that we should have recorded that's now lost in the ether. But other than that, I think China Pig had a good run.
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, things were definitely happening and it was very exciting and very popping. Now, did you do anything in a sort of rock and roll context after China Pig?
Well, I was in a band called Static Press 19. with Tom Ulias doing DJ stuff and Morgan Kelsey playing keyboards and drums. And I don't know, he had a lot of little gadgets that I wasn't really fully aware of. And I played guitar and, sang and played bass clarinet and saxophone. I don't know that I would call it rock music. I chanted more than I sang.
Yeah, and that reminds me of Olive Grain also, which is getting more and more afield.
Yeah, Olive Grain with Bonnie Jean Wisnowski, opera singer, and I played guitar, bass clarinet, and her dad joined us a few times on stage, and he did some recording with us. Once again, it was great to make that music after China Pig, because there was a level of complexity that came with being in a 3-piece loud rock band with improvised parts. And I feel like with Olive Grain, we were able to just kind of just chill out, and it was just the two of us and just sort of find some space. And really for me, I was just kind of creating a spot for Bonnie to really kind of showcase what she could do with her vocals. My only thing was I didn't want her to sing any words, because I think the voice is so beautiful. I didn't want to get wrapped up in any lyrics. And so there's only one song that has some lyrics, and it's about our cat. So for the most part, it was really just about her using her voice as an instrument. But, she was my girlfriend at the time, and as all things, it ended.
We know the story well. Well, I'd forgotten about the bass clarinet, but I remember I was kind of surprised the first time you showed up with a bass clarinet. How'd you stumble upon that one?
Well, speaking of exes, Kathy Kelly was doing a big tag sale run. And I was like, yeah, I feel like I want to play the saxophone. She's like, oh man, I see them all over the place. And I was like, all right, well, I could basically spend $100 on a saxophone. She's like, no problem. I'll find you a saxophone. And she went off on a big tag sale thing. I didn't see her for a couple weeks. And she came back. She's like, yeah, I don't know, dude. All I saw were trumpets. I don't know what happened. Usually I see a lot of saxophones. And I was like, okay. And I was definitely disappointed. But then I traded a distortion pedal, a Boss orange distortion pedal, to Amy Kalisher for a clarinet. And I felt somewhat defeated because I wanted a saxophone, but I ended up with a clarinet. And as soon as I started to play it, my interest was piqued. And I thought, this is something. And then, Captain Beefheart is such a big influence in my life. I just had to go that octave lower and get the bass clarinet. And, for me, playing guitar, playing chords was one thing, but the idea of playing a saxophone or a bass clarinet, just playing the notes, and, the way it's set up, I don't see what I'm playing in the same way I do with guitar. So it was much more abstract, and it was like breathing out loud. It was awesome. I loved it. I still play bass clarinet. I still play clarinet. I did end up getting a saxophone. It was a guy, I don't know, somehow he's connected to GNU Fuzz, but he was going into the Navy, and I think I still owe him money for it. So
we won't talk about that then.
Well, I don't know. I mean, if he texts you or something, I'll send him the money. I don't care. But I took a saxophone and I played it. I played it in Static Press 19, and I liked it. I do. And it's funny because, when Kathy came back and she didn't have a saxophone, I was like, oh, big sad face. But it turns out I feel like this is a much better path for me. And so, the bass clarinet gods were looking out for me on that tag sale trip.
Well, there's something about those bass tones, because I'm a bass player by avocation. That bass is the place, man. It's the way it vibrates your chest cavity and your entire body, man.
Well, there's a few things with that. The way Javanese gamelan music was described to me was that some notes you hear and then some notes you feel. And there's some things you feel before you hear them. And there's something really appealing about that. And then to bring it all the way back to rock and roll, seeing Van Halen, Michael Anthony's bass, rattled my innards. That was something. I think there's something, maybe this comes back to the physicality of the music. I could play guitar for hours, but I get tired when I play bass clarinet. There's a lot of, breathing, a lot of pushing air, a lot of it takes a lot more. Like I have another piece called MB89 where I play bass clarinet inside a cylinder for 4 hours a night. And, I have to practice for like a couple of months before that. Part of it is my amateur, part of it is my breath, but most of it is like the presence aspect of being able to be in the moment that long while playing. And I think if I did it with a different instrument, it wouldn't be as good. There's something to the breathiness of it, the breath, the idea that from the moment you're born to the moment you're dead, you're going to take a breath every couple of moments for your entire life. And so I think that is very appealing. And so I think about that a lot.
Wow. And that also ties into your other works. Your concept is overarching. I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I think what I'm learning now is that all of these pieces kind of fit together in an odd way. So, I mean, you want to jump into it with Sonny's and cue music and all that?
I think we should leave that for the next episode because we're right on the cusp of getting into something really deep. And
Okay.
we've been at it for over an hour now. So let's just take a little time out.
Okay.
It looks like we've got 2 episodes in the can right now to come up on. So that's great. I mean, I love this. We're talking about art and ideas, and that to me is what it's all about. So let's wrap up episode number 1.
Okie dokie.
And we'll come back in a short little while for episode number 2. And I'll just use this as a moment to say, everybody, be sure to check me out. I've got my YouTube channel, Malcolm Tent. Where's my action poster? If you can see the poster, Malcolm Tent, MALCOLMTENT. I'm a man of action. I'm on YouTube, Facebook, my label TPOS, on Discogs. Check it out. Buy a lot of my stuff because it's all good. And it helps me make a living as an artist, much like today's guest, Craig Colorusso. So yeah, Craig, thanks a lot for an hour of really, really cool conversation and ideas. And we'll be back for number 2 soon.
Okie dokie, man. Thank you.
Oi, Malcolm 10, over and out.